Hey friend, welcome back to Bible Tract Echoes. I'm Mike McCurry, your host. I'm here again with Pastor Aaron Harris. He's been with us all this week, and we've greatly enjoyed our time talking about mentors, talking about those that have invested in us. And today we're going to take that one step further, and I'll have Pastor Harris introduce himself in just a moment. But a kind thought unexpressed does nothing. And it's amazing to me how often I think we were talking offline before we started this particular broadcast, Pastor Harris, and maybe there was a Mark Twain quote that you just shared with me. Share that with the listeners and tell us the context of that just a little bit as we dive into talking about some of our mentors and those that have meant much to us.
Sure. Thank you for having me again, Brother Mike. I believe it was Mark Twain who said he could go on in the strength of a good compliment for 3 to 4 months. And I think that there's great value in recognizing what other men have done to invest in us, because I think that we will get to a point, if we haven't reached that sooner or later in the ministry, well, we will ask the question, is it worth it? Is this, all of the toil, is all of the struggle, is all of the bearing of burdens and heavy things, is it worth all that we go through? And sometimes, as Paul said in 2 Timothy 3, when commend myself again unto you, how many times I have to prove that I am who I am? And he said, you're the proof. The fact that that church at Corinth existed and what God has done in your heart and life is validation that we were trying to serve the Lord with all sincerity, and we were doing this for the right reasons. And so I think it's important that, not to embarrass anybody, but that we express, you know, our gratitude for mentors or men who have had a great impact in our hearts and lives, and into what extent they've had that impact. I think it's not only good for us to get in the habit of expressing gratitude, but sometimes it's good to hear somebody, you know, commend. Certainly the men who have invested in us, I believe, are worthy of that. And we want them to know that we love them and are thankful for their investment in us. And we want to have that same kind of impact in somebody else's life one day.
Amen. Now, there are so many things I could say about those that have invested in me, but I'm just thinking, even as of late, and in just a moment, I'll kind of ping pong this back to you, Pastor. Maybe you can bring up the name of a man that's invested in you, some lessons that have been taught. But I'm thinking in recent days, I've had a few, sometimes seems like multi-hour conversations with some mentors. And sometimes it's not just what they say. It's simply that they took the time to listen and let me talk through some things and almost, it's going to sound silly, but figure it out for myself sometimes. I know what the right answer is. I just can't get my head wrapped around it. And often they'll ask great questions. I had one man ask me a phenomenal question. I won't go into detail. It would take too long just to even explain the context. But he just phrased the question in such a way that I was like, oh, yeah, that makes too much sense. And so I spend, and it seems so ridiculous to me. And for you dear folks that listen on this radio broadcast 15 minutes a day, Monday through Friday, hearing me talk to you, you're like, yeah, we do that all the time, Brother Micah. But in all sincerity, to talk to one person and for me to monologue for 45 minutes, and then they kind of take all this information and then they ask just one piercing question that gets to the heart of the matter. And it's like, it just puts everything into perspective. It's like, that is so incredibly helpful. But oftentimes, love is spelled Time. It's just some time. And so I'm thankful for the men in my life that have done that. But Pastor Harris, if you could think of maybe just even just by first name, someone that's invested in you, and maybe some life lessons you've learned over these past few years of ministry, whether related to church or pastoring or child rearing, something that your mentors have taught you.
Sure. I'm with you in that it's hard to narrow down the lessons. I've been in your shoes as well, where you call someone and it's just you're basically using them as a sounding board to ensure that you're not going crazy. Pastor Jay Reed in Swanee, Georgia, I had the privilege to work for him for 6.5 years. And our relationship goes back even further. He was my youth pastor. And so it seems like the majority of my life, he's been a mentor figure for me. There's a difference in working for somebody. You enter into a different relationship a little bit. It's almost more a peer relationship, a little bit older peer than to a younger peer. But some of the counsel that he's given me specifically about church and hey, maybe you call and say, I've been praying about this and this thing happened. Should I be connecting these dots? Is that a spiritual way to think? And having the great consolation of someone else who's gone through that and said, I've had that happen to me and I've questioned, am I thinking the right way? This is how this worked out. Um, I have a friend who the Lord is using and around the world, and his name's Tony. God has used him so many times in just simple, small, questions, text messages. What do you think about this? And one of the things I'll say is the most helpful is all men who have been influential in my heart and life have, first of all, been accessible. They've been, to your point, willing to take the time and are happy to do it. And they see the value in investing in a younger man who really wants to know the right way to do things, tries to approach things with humility. I need to seek somebody else's wisdom on this. I have a hunch, but I don't want to just depend on my hunch to always be right. And these men have constantly given me advice, and it's amazing. You can pull advice from or counsel from 4 or 5 different men in different ministries and around the world. And it seems like you can tell that you've got the right mentors when they're constantly affirming the same biblical principles, even though they all come from different circles and from different backgrounds or in different ministries. It seems like the counsel tends to align most times. That's such a huge help.
Absolutely. I speaking to that point, I literally had a situation last couple of months, and I was just looking for some guidance. And I called 4 different men who in different areas of the country, just some of them are friends with each other, some not, and asked for their counsel, explained the situation that I was looking at, and got essentially the same advice. And these aren't men, and one of the things I appreciate about my mentors and yours as well, they don't tell you God's will. They give you some tools to examine. You have an idea of maybe here's a biblical concept to consider. And sometimes it would be easier if they just say, "Hey, dummy, here's what you should be doing, and here's God's will. It's so obvious to me because of this and this." But they don't do that. They give you the tools to figure it out for
Right.
yourself. And it's so powerful when you can believe it for yourself because you've come to that conclusion, maybe with some very helpful tools. It's like, my dad has so many more tools than I have. In his garage, it's just massive. I'm not a very mechanical guy, but if I need to borrow a tool, I can go to my dad. Now, I can do the job by myself, but it's so helpful when I can borrow one of his tools instead of using my Tonka toy set. He does Milwaukee stuff, my Ryobi stuff. Hope I'm not offending any tool guys out there. My green Ryobi stuff isn't quite up to the task sometimes, and so he's got this nice Milwaukee stuff. And when I can go borrow a tool from him, it makes the job so much easier. And it's so true spiritually speaking as well. These are guys, they've been working these tools, using these tools for ages. And they let us walk in their garage, figuratively speaking. Yeah, that's the tool you need. Go figure out God's will for yourself. And it's such a help to me, and exactly to your
Right.
point, to see how 4 different men from across the country can give essentially the exact same biblical advice. It's almost like they're playing from the same sheet of music.
It is. And I had a very similar situation as you, where I've called about 4 or 5 different men about the same thing and have gotten this counsel from all of them, all from different walks of life. And I think if mentorship is going to work, there has to be an agreed upon relationship ahead of time. There's an agreed upon transparency. One of the greatest comforts is to know that I'm not the only person who has thought this. Paul told Timothy, he says, "Thou hast fully known my doctrine, my manner of life, my purpose, patience, tribulation." He says, I have not withheld anything from you. I've been very transparent about all of this. And that would help Timothy walk through some things in life, knowing that he saw Paul through the good, the bad, and the ugly. He saw these things happen to him, what his reactions were, and it's helpful to have a mentor who's transparent, who can say, here's an area where I failed. Here's an area where I wish I was better at this. Because sometimes we view people as, the paragon of spirituality. We'll never be like them. Um, And I reached a message at a teen camp about this, that everything that we look at in hindsight in the Bible as the spiritual high point of somebody's life, in the moment, they did not view it as that. They viewed it as maybe a low, whether an emotional, spiritual, physical low. And you think, wow, Abraham, man, I could never have the Mount Moriah experience that he had. He wasn't real thrilled about it when it was happening. It wasn't like he was looking forward to sacrificing his son, but we look at it as such a spiritual high. If he was telling us about it, he would probably be very transparent about his feelings. He wouldn't say, well, you just have to, he wouldn't give you some sort of a spiritual, he would probably say, I had no idea. I was just trying to do what God wanted me to do. My emotions were, and that kind of mentorship is so helpful, because we're all going to at some point feel like I'm a failure. I haven't done this right. Maybe I've misjudged the will of God. I'm the worst Christian I know. And there's going to be other men that say, I've been there. I know exactly what that feels like. I've made the same mistakes. Here's how you recover from them. And that transparency, I think, really helps bind the mentor and the mentee together, knowing that we're in this together. And no one's going to be
Absolutely.
perfect in this.
Absolutely. And the blessing it is to be in the trenches with these guys. They're not talking to us from an ivory tower. They're not coming down from on high, just delivering us little dictates and things. No, these are men that have been there, done that, and they are willing to go back over, as you said, the old battlegrounds and show the tactical mistakes they may have made. Now, tomorrow on the broadcast, we're going to conclude this week with Pastor Harris. I'd encourage you to tune in. Don't miss out on Bible Tract Echoes. I'm Micah McCurry. Pastor Harris has joined us again today and will tomorrow. I'd encourage you to tune in. My prayer, as always, is that you have a great day for His glory, and we'll plan on talking to you soon. God bless.
Thank you for joining us today for Bible Tract Echoes, a ministry of Bible Tracts Incorporated. If you would like to receive a free sample booklet of all of our tracts, you can contact us by calling 309-828-6888. That's 309-828-6888. Our mailing address is P.O. Box 130, Dwight, Illinois 60420. A faster way to contact us is to go to our website at BibleTractsInc.org. That's BibleTractsInc.org. There you will find more information about our ministry and details on how you can support Bible Tracts Incorporated. Thanks for listening, and may the Lord richly bless you as you serve Him.